Hey everyone, it's Helen from S&B Deal Hunter. Today we have Joe Van Deman and Colin King with us from Circle City Capital Group. Joe and Colin are based in the Indianapolis area, and they've made 15 acquisitions since 2018 across consumer brands. They've acquired a distributor of home decor and a distributor of Montessori school displays, which is interesting, as well as a financial education and training company and more that we'll dive into. So, really looking forward to hearing Joe and Colin's story here. Joe and Colin, great to have you both on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Joe and Colin, let's first start with your guys' backgrounds. What were you guys doing before this, and what got you guys into this world of business ownership and acquisitions in particular?
Yeah, well, I started my career at Google. I was standing up new operations and doing so across customer service and sales. Following that, I had a stint in early stage tech companies. And I just really found working in those VC-backed companies that I didn't really like that model. I like small businesses where you're generating capital, where there's a clear customer, clear product or service that you're selling, and something that you can grow. So I started looking around for a business to buy or a business to build that was more that traditional small business space after some experience in the VC-backed world. Colin, your background is very different. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I started my career as CPA, Big Four accounting in auditing public company financial statements. I got my CFA, went to work at a hedge fund, investing in public companies, kind of a small cap special situations emphasis that we were deploying. And then the kind of the third bucket of my previous career was CFO at a private equity firm and helped them do about half a dozen small business acquisitions. So I actually love the financial statement analysis, looking at companies and looking at deals and investing in things. So, I bring kind of the finance accounting side of the equation to our partnership. But Joe and I have like a really nice kind of yin yang skill set that we bring to our partnership.
Oh, it sounds like it. I love how complementary your guys'
Yeah.
skill sets are. How did you guys find each other? Did you know each other? Were you guys friends before? Curious.
We definitely weren't friends before, Helen, and I know you have a lot of interesting people on the podcast, but Colin and I, we met via Craigslist. So maybe the
That
first
is
time we met.
crazy.
Yeah. Ironically, Colin and I look for deals in a variety of different places. I would say we're more than just the biz buy sell type guys and your traditional brokers. And I had been on Craigslist. I had posted some ads there and said, if you're local and you want to sell your business, you're interested in retiring. I'm interested in buying a business here in the area. Colin was on Craigslist hunting for someone who was posting for selling their business, and he saw my ad. And we connected through that ad and had an initial phone call and said, wow, we're actually really aligned in terms of what we want to do, what we're interested in building, very similar values and things. And, over the next probably 12 to 18 months, we got to know one another and we kicked a lot of deals back and forth. This is 2017 timeframe. ETA wasn't really a word yet. People weren't part of this trend or anything. So we were pretty early on that in terms of we shared a lot of deals back and forth. We shared different perspectives. And when it finally came down to pulling the trigger and getting a deal done, we said, we're going to need one another for the complementary skill sets anyway. So we actually ended up buying our first business. And Colin will tell you that was a business we sourced on Craigslist. So our thesis was somewhat accurate. We found a business for sale on Craigslist and pulled the trigger for it.
And survived to tell the story about it.
That that is a crazy story. Very unique. Never heard it before. So if anyone's listening and looking to find a partner, look at the unconventional places. Maybe go on Craigslist.
Would
Um,
not recommend. Would not recommend.
so what were some of the deals you guys, were kind of sharing with each other? I'm sure over those like first 12 to 18 months, you're maybe not fully set on working together, but what were some of the deals you guys looked at, and what was the first deal you ultimately decided to kind of pursue and close on?
Yeah, I think we cast a really wide net, and we're very opportunistic investors. So we'll look at just about anything, and even some of those areas that we say we won't look at, we end up looking at. So we've generally said, we don't want to look at your convenience stores, restaurants, not interested in apparel, and things like that. But I say that, and here I'm wearing one of our flannel shirts today. This is one of our brands that we own. We're pretty heavy in apparel, and it wasn't by intent. It was just opportunistic. And then once we got into the industry, we really liked it and kept going. So we looked at deals. I'd say a wide range of deals. Started doing the typical like sign up for lots of brokers. Let's go on biz buy sell. Let's just look at these things that come across. And I think what we look for is just different than what a lot of people look for. A lot of people buying their first time, they have a very strict buy box. And what we found is that there's no business out there that's perfect. So if we can get 60 or 70% comfortable with the business, and it's the right 60 or 70%, then we can make up for the rest in terms of some of the shortcomings of that business. So I'd say we looked at a variety of different industries, but we didn't let things scare us that may scare other people, like seasonality, location, a variety of things like that.
I think in the early days, you're really just trying to turn over a lot of stones, because if you depending on what someone's background is coming into buying their first business, like you really do have to cast a wide net and turn over a lot of stones. So I almost treated it like public market investing and said I want to screen for certain criteria. So I liked looking for deals where you're paying half of revenue or less, and they're saying that margins are like 10% or something that passes like the sniff test, not claiming to have 40, 50% margins on, a business that should have 15% margins net at the end of the day. So I treated it that way. Like we're screening for stuff, we're turning over a lot of stones, we're looking for, maybe older eclectic listings that other people may be put off by.
That's interesting. And you guys obviously met on Craigslist. Where else were you guys looking?
Be
So
aware.
Craigslist is a source. We'll look at places that other people don't look. So, some of the best leads we've had have come from things like real estate brokers. Someone that's selling a building where the business has been located for 30 years. They've already set the expectations for the seller that they're going to recoup their investment on that building because it's just appreciated over the time. Maybe they're willing to let the business go for a song at that. So we'll look at deals like that. We look at just odd things, and then we talk about it a lot too. We talk to accountants, attorneys, people in our network. We let them know what we're doing. So we've been fortunate. We have a lot of referrals that come in as well.
And while you guys were searching, were you guys working other jobs at the time or doing this full time? What did that look like?
Yeah, we I was working full time when we were going through the search process, and we got to a point where we bought our first business. I was working full time, like yeah, we'll come back to that in a minute. I was working full time after we bought our first company off of Craigslist. Joe had some side projects that he was consulting on, but more or less full time involved in this project. And then we got to the point in call it late 2019 where we looked at each other and said, if we want to do this full time, get compensated for it, be able to cover the debt, and have enough room to reinvest in other projects, then we're going to need to go buy enough cash flow to be able to do that. So we did a string of three acquisitions in like a 4 month span of time in late 2019. That was sort of the jumping off point for us to both do this full time.
Wow. And how big were was your first business that you guys acquired? Obviously, maybe not enough to support both of you guys full time, but what were you sort of starting off at there? And I guess tell us more about that deal.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was go ahead, Joe. No, go ahead.
So our first business was a small deal. I think we had, I don't know, less than $100,000 cash into it, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And it
In terms
was
of
a
investment.
delivery service for automotive parts. So we did automotive part delivery to dealerships. When you take your car into the shop and they say, "Oh, we'll have that part for you in the morning," we were those guys that would drop off your parts at night. So we started with about 5 routes, and then we grew that business into about 10 routes, 10 or 11 routes, and put a manager in place. So I think looking back on it, you say, oh, we did what you're supposed to do, right? Like we grew the business, we put the manager in place, we put the bench in place to the point that it had value and could transact better. However, we had a lot of sleepless nights with it. Our first night that we took over the business, two of the drivers didn't show up. So both Colin and I are in trucks driving, and that wasn't uncommon. Where we'd hop in the truck and drive 400 miles in a night, delivering automotive parts. So Colin was doing that with a full time job, and I had some contract work on the side. It was really tough to manage that. So it was a challenge, but great little business in the way that it cash flowed on a weekly basis. We got paid weekly, we paid our drivers weekly, and then we just really had to account for our equipment cost and things as we continued to grow. Terrible business in terms of like if you want to have any type of life, marriage or relationships, things like that. I think it was really challenging. So coming out of it, I think Colin and I said, you know what, we really like working together, and we don't want to work in the trucking industry, so let's go do it again.
I love that. And do you guys still own that business today?
We don't. We exited that to a private equity firm about 18 months after we bought it. And that was really what allowed us to continue growing from there. So we reinvested that, the earnings from that into the next three businesses Colin was talking about. And what that really allowed us to do is we said, great, we want to have multiple platforms. We want to have multiple businesses that we're operating. And by buying three in relatively quick succession, it really forced us to put some people in place, put some processes in place, and say, we're not going to be the guy in the driver's seat all the time there. So they were still small businesses, but it really forced us to focus on how are we going to scale this? How are we going to get the right people, the right processes? So that way each business isn't 100% reliant on one of us operating that day to day.
Oh, that's a very impressive turnaround time from, buying to exiting in 18 months. So in those 18 months, you guys, how long did it take from you guys, taking over ships occasionally to then, growing it to 10, 11 rounds, then putting a manager in place? Was that all sort of in a couple months and then you sold it immediately, or what was that like?
It was probably 9 to 12 months where we saw the growth opportunity and where we were able to pull in the additional staffing. I think we quickly got into it, and there was a lot that was broken and a lot that we needed to spend time and energy on. And as you've probably seen, Helen, like when you're running a business, it's really easy just to say focus on what's right there in front of you. And I think we had two things going for us. One, there's two of us, which I think is just helpful to have a second set of eyes on the situation sometimes. And two, it allowed for a different perspective. So, I have some vivid memories of being in a truck driving in the middle of the night. And I've had a long night of driving a truck, and Colin calls me at 4:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Oh, I've got another route for us." And I'm like, I can't staff the ones that we have. What are you talking about, Colin? Right? And where he's looking at the next business or whatever that is. And I think it was just a really healthy tension that forced us to keep looking at like where are we going. And it would have been easier in so many ways just to say I'll drive a truck every night that I need to. But I think really focusing on where are we going to be a month from now, where are we going to be 6 months from now, really focused us and said, great, how are we going to train the staff we need? How are we going to get the management in place? And allowed us to take that big step to put a manager level in place.
And was that, what do you think made the deal ultimately attractive enough for a private equity firm to be interested? Was it putting the manager in place, growing it a little bit? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, by the time we got to that point, it was pretty turnkey, right? So you had a manager who was, overseeing, handling the customer relationship. They were overseeing the staff, capable of hire fire decisions. There was a backup system in place, so like you were a couple layers removed from that first line of defense. And like the economics of the business were actually pretty attractive. I mean, like Joe was saying, we got paid weekly and all of our expenses came out weekly. So from a working capital standpoint, there was zero. You still had to operate assets and invest in like trucks, and they break down pretty frequently. But if you can manage that, it was a pretty nice cash flow business without significant working capital in it. So for the right owner who wanted to deal with that, it could be a really attractive business. Just you get a lot of phone calls at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, like hey, something happened and I need your input, and that's just not something we wanted to do forever.
Yeah. And how did you guys find that first manager?
Yeah, it was just a listing through Indeed, and we went through a traditional hiring process, and as traditional as you get for a business that operates in the middle of the night. So I think that was part of our screening process. Is are you willing to meet us at Denny's at 11:30 p.m. because that's where our weekly meetings are, right?
Team meetings,
Before.
yes, that's
That's
right.
great.
So I think we had to find the right person who was in that type of mentality and mindset. So we had someone who came from the trucking industry, and it ended up being a great asset because she knew how to really staff appropriately, how to build the bench, how to do what really needed to do in terms of taking care of the team, taking care of the equipment. And Colin and I are strong believers that we're decently smart guys. We can go into a business and figure it out, but we do find a lot of value in people who have done things before and have that type of experience. So we did it. We looked at a number of people for the role, but ultimately it came down to someone who could handle the schedule and really had experience, and not just experience but a preference in working nights, right? We wanted someone who said, this is part of my life, this is what I do, this is what I enjoy, and just really was able to do that in terms of the recruiting, the staffing, the keeping the people happy. Really made a big difference for this
It
business.
was it was kind of that first taste of, I'm sure you've seen this in your background, Helen, but it was that first taste of like find the right person, pay up for that person to get quality talent, and like overnight they resolve so many different headaches for you. So just the power of how important your people are, like that was really the first taste of, holy cow, this thing is significantly better to own and operate with that person there than it was without it. So there was a ton of luck that came into play in finding her, but
Yeah.
she was really our first truly amazing manager. I would call her like a general manager type background type person. But that was like a really excellent lesson coming out of that business, among tons of other lessons.
No, I mean, 100% agree. And how did you guys structure compensation with her? Obviously, you relied on her a lot. So what did that look like?
Yeah, I would say it was a pretty basic compensation structure. It was something that we gave her the flexibility she needed. So, she was thrilled to have a role in the middle of the night because it fit her personal and family needs. So we gave her that, and then we really gave her a lot of the autonomy that she wanted. I think that's what we found with a lot of the managers that we operate with today. We want people that are hungry. We want people that want the ball, right? And that just goes a long way. And generally, when you find someone like that, they want you too, right? They want that opportunity. So I think it was just really matching, call it personalities, call it needs, call it where the business was, but she didn't want someone to be micromanaging her, and we didn't want to micromanage her. So I think coming out of a larger company where she had operated previously, she liked having the flexibility in things. So her compensation package was just a relatively simple, here's a salary and here's, some cash bonus based on, minimal downtime and things like that. So it wasn't anything really too complex.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And when you guys were, running this business for that 18 months, were you guys still looking at other deals, or kind of full time in this, and then only after you sold, kind of decided, hey, we're gonna like really be aggressive about acquiring more?
Yeah.
Uh,
So
we've
when
we've
we
always Yeah, go ahead, Joe. We've always had our hands looking at looking at other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a drug, right?
It
So
is. Yeah, there's some shiny object syndrome at play, but I think when we got into that business, it quickly turned into how do we set this thing up so that we can part ways with it and go in a better direction. So I think that very quickly became what we were trying to do from a strategy standpoint in owning that business, while still keeping an eye toward, okay, if we sell this thing, we're going to need to replace it with something else. So we still, with the very little time that we had, not running that thing, we're looking at a whole bunch of other things. Yeah.
and what kind of changed in terms of your thesis maybe afterwards, after you sold the business? Did you guys think, hey, we're gonna, be more particular about the industries we're going for? How did you guys know we're going to be super aggressive and buy 3 to 4 in four? Like, I mean, a very, very quick turnaround. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm curious how you guys thought about that.
I think the two things that I think came out of that deal that we were optimizing for afterward were one, can you put yourself in the shoes of doing whatever the thing is, right? So if it's driving trucks in the middle of the night and you're the owner of that company, then you got to be ready to go drive trucks in the middle of the night. So I think we had more of a filter on what is the actual thing getting done, right? And are you willing to do that? So that was one. And then the second piece, I think we started optimizing for the virtual remote environment, like the flexible, you can be anywhere and operate a business, or you can be sort of geographically distanced from it. And this was still pre-COVID, actually, that we were going down this thought process. So, I think we still wanted something that was sort of local to us or could have some local element, but definitely more flexibility in like how, when, and where you can work in that business. So those were two things that I think we started to optimize for afterward.
Yeah. The other thing, Helen, that we learned from that, I think we looked at it and said, it's our first deal. It's fine. Like, what do we have to lose other than the money that we put into it? And what we learned is like, you have a lot to lose, right? It was a cheap price tag, but a business like that just ran our life, and it has the potential to wreck your life too. So I think that's one thing that we learned very early on is like, oh, we can lose a lot more than just money in this situation. And just our initial investment, it can actually drain our pockets, our resources from other areas. It can be really stressful and challenging on our personal relationships, your health, your well-being, a variety of other things. So I think we do put a much more of a stronger focus on what's it mean for our lifestyle, what's the opportunity here. Colin and I are both workaholics. We like working quite a bit and we enjoy that, but neither of us like doing so in a truck anymore. So I think it just was a great filter in that perspective.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And after selling that business, did you guys think we need to go bigger as well, or what was your kind of thinking there? And tell us about, I guess, the next couple of deals you guys immediately went after.
Yeah, so a couple things, Helen. I mean, one, I was talking to another searcher this morning, and what he reminded me of is still very true in our business today. Is like when it rains, it pours. We didn't come out and say that we need to buy 3 businesses right away. We're generally looking and searching for businesses, and we want to push on a business until we get to that point that we say no, this is not a good fit for us. So we didn't have a mandate to go and say we're going to buy 3 businesses in a short period of time. It was we are searching, we're continually searching, and that the chance of getting a deal done is really really small. And it just happened to be that the next 3 deals came along kind of one after another. So the businesses I would say were somewhat larger in terms of total revenue, but they weren't big businesses by any means. I think we did one business that we didn't end up taking over any employees, and we ended up staffing it with maybe 2 or 3 people on our own. We had another business that had, I think, 3 employees out of the gate. Maybe the third business only had 2 or 3 employees out of the gate too. So it wasn't a huge set of businesses. It was more businesses, more industries, and diversified revenue, which we liked. But still, we're small time at this point, and we're funding this out of our pockets. We don't have a whole lot of money. We did some SBA lending and things, but generally these are small acquisitions that we're talking about.
I think we were trying to solve for cash flow, like what's the total cash flow we need to be able to do this thing full time. And so we had a pipeline of things that we were looking at in sort of parallel path. Okay, we're getting further along and we like this one, or we're getting further along with this one too, and we like that one too. Well, okay, well, let's just do them both instead of saying, hey, we just need one or the other, because in theory we had double the manpower, right? We got a partnership here. And why not, right? Why not keep pushing the envelope? So it started with let's solve for the earnings, and we were kind of running tracks on a whole bunch of different deals at that point. So post that trucking business, actually, the first one we might have bought that before we sold the trucking business. I don't even remember the one in
We
California.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, so the first one we bought was really small total transaction size, but it had a whole bunch of revenue and it was based in California. We bought that in the summer of 2019. It was a really low multiple of revenue, and we picked it up and moved it from California to Indiana. The woman who owned it was breaking even, but because she was running it in a pretty high cost part of the country, so we bought that in summer of 2019, and then the two other ones that we bought were in Q4 of 2019. So we had a couple months gap between those. So we were running this little thing that we picked up and moved to Indiana, like while we were running this trucking business at the same time for like a brief period there.
That's interesting. What industries were these next couple deals in? Were there any sort of synergies across them, or did you kind of run all of them independently at the same time?
Two of them were e-com, and then one was accounting services, bookkeeping, specifically virtual bookkeeping. Um, we didn't have like a theme that we were shooting for, and we were running each of them as like independent companies instead of trying to say, hey, let's smash them together and run it with one team. And that's actually how we've done everything to date since we've started this.
How did you guys manage, running all four at the same time? How did you guys sort of split up your roles and your time?
Yeah, I think for our different businesses, Colin and I generally each, take the lead on a business where we have our own skill sets and things, and we share those. But we generally have, like, if you point at a business, you can say Colin or I is in the driver's seat in terms of making sure that that business is moving forward and the wheels don't fall off on it. So, early days, I think we still do that quite a bit where my background, I pushed a little bit more on the e-com side, and Colin was a little bit more on the accounting side, just due to our skill sets and our experience that we've had. But generally, that tends to be true today as we continue to grow businesses. There are some businesses that I just naturally spend a little bit more time and energy in, and he does the same. So we've never really charted it out or made that real formal. But we're very honest with one another, and we let each other know when we need help or when we think the other one's slacking and needs to pick up something else. So I think again it's created a healthy tension for us, to this point to keep growing and keep us focused. That being said, we have been fortunate where those businesses have grown and we now have managers in place for those. So each of our businesses or platforms today either has at least a general manager or maybe a CEO or full management suite in it.
And were you guys initially the GMs, or what does your playbook look like? Is it, you take over, you learn the business, you put in a GM, or, now, do some of them already come with more management in place?
Yeah, there was never a playbook. The playbook maybe there may be a playbook now, but it's every deal since day one has been kind of a step stair higher in terms of like how big it is and what it brings to the table. So in the early days, it was really one of us or the two of us together stepping into that who's the leader, who's the person in charge for that business. And some of these things were really small, like 2 to 10 people on the team. So in those early days, Joe sat in that CEO GM seat for our ecom business, and I sat in that seat for our accounting business, and that's how we tasked that for a period of time. But as we've grown and scaled, I think it just really showed the importance of who's going to be that person, right? Who is calling the shots, who's the operator, and at the same time realizing, that's probably not our strongest skill that we bring to the table, believe it or not. And so now, if we were to go do a deal today, I think we would solve first for who's going to be the person to GM that business or be the operator. And maybe they don't have all the skills to call them like a true CEO, but they're going to be the one running it. Team's going to feed into them, and then Joe and I can bring our unique skills that we have to that business to help round that person out. I think that's how we would approach it today.
And
Yeah,
how you guys approach it today? Would you guys be looking for that person after you took over, or even as you guys are kind of in diligence, already identifying who that potential operator would be?
Yeah, so for today, any businesses that we look at, we're looking at it and doing it in the due diligence period or even prior to that. I mean, I have a network of people that I would call operators that are up and coming and on a bench that I'm looking for the right opportunity for them. And some of those are just eager people who are searching for a business, or those people that are searching for a business but will never find one. They're just not really comfortable with going the route of doing a personal guarantee, taking on a lot of debt and things like those are good candidates for us who really want the support and the infrastructure that we have in place now. We can provide a level of support, and they can still act as a CEO. And then we're also fortunate that we do have a number of portfolio companies right now that I feel like we're grooming talent within those. And as we continue to grow, like I keep an eye on our internal staff and say, at some point I'm going to pluck them from company A and move them over to company B, because I know them, they know us, they know our systems, they know how we like to operate. And, after 2 or 3 years of understanding how we operate, they're now in a great spot to really take leadership and take the reins on a new business.
You guys, spoke about how a lot of the backgrounds of these folks maybe were people who wanted to search for a business themselves but could never really pull the trigger, whether it's risk or PG or things like that. How do you guys think about compensating these people who maybe have an entrepreneurial spirit, um, versus that very first deal we talked about where it was a pretty straightforward comp um, package?
Yeah, I think this is the thing that I think gets me pretty excited about the future. In like I think that's what we're actively trying to solve for is where are the people who were like Joe and I were 10 years ago that want to buy a company and want to get in the driver's seat and be the operator? How can you bring them in, help back them, give them the support and resources they need? Because we've been there before, we've done it before, and maybe they have a certain background or level of experience, and then at the same time give them that equity upside, that feeling of like they're rolling up their sleeves and want to reap the reward of that long term. So I think that's something we're actively trying to solve for. Happy to swap notes someday on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I do think it is something we're very much in the position that we're happy to do profit sharing. We're happy to offer at this point. We're not of the opinion that we have to own 100% of the company, and we'd like to put a package together for an executive or a GM who's really aligned with what we're doing to make sure that the business is moving in the right direction. So we're happy for the right people to be a part of that and to share in the ownership.
I think what's really impressive is that you've been able to grow your portfolio so quickly in not that many years. And I think a lot of people, when they buy a business, they get stuck working in the business and never get themselves out of it. That takes a ton of discipline. Did you guys sort of always set a time frame? Like, if we're going to go in initially and you know be the GMs ourselves, we're going to get ourselves out within 6 months, 12 months, or whatever it may be. Or how did you guys really, you
This
know,
this
yeah.
is this is the benefit of having the partnership, and maybe for other people that's just like a mentor or advisory board or whatever. But like if you're doing something like let's say you've got a unique skill set and I've got a unique skill set and you're doing stuff that's not like well aligned with that, right? With that like ikigai concept or whatever. Um, you're thinking in your head, you're like, how the hell do I get out of this as fast as possible, right? And so it sort of forces you to think nonlinear. And so if Joe and I are working on stuff and I'm working in this one thing because I'm in the driver's seat because we bought it, I'm thinking to myself, how do I get out of this? And I've got Joe to bounce these things off of and say, okay, well, what can we do? How can we solve for this? What needs to change in the business? Do we need to add, do we need to bolt something onto it so it's big enough, has enough scale to like put someone in that seat? Do we need to walk away from something, 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 right? So I think having that partnership, that sounding board to think broader, like almost dream in a sense, like, hey, this is where we want to be. What do we need to do to make that a reality? It sort of forces you down that path. And then, I mean, candidly, you've got more resources, more firepower. In the early days, we combination of two people putting their savings into it, right? We had a little bit more money to start with than maybe a single person would. But I think having that non-employee sounding board that you can go to and spitball those ideas, that's how you get there faster, in my opinion.
Yeah, Helen, I think the other thing that's really helped with that is the velocity of which we've acquired businesses. And again, not by any set methodology of, oh, it's another 4 months or another 6 months, we need to add one to the portfolio. But as they come, it forces you to up level really significantly, right? Because all of a sudden your focus is now tied into, great, we have a new acquisition. There's either a new system, new process, new team to learn, and something to build on there, or you're tucking them into an existing operation. Your focus just gets shifted somewhere else, which means you don't have a whole lot of time to focus on all the things that you were doing running something day to day. So it forces you to have people in there that are running the business day to day, or get the right people in there, the right processes in place, because you see something come down the pipe and you say, wow, I've got 30 days before I'm going to have to carry a big load here pretty soon. So it's something that has really forced us to continue to move fast, get the people in place, and take on something new, is that velocity of which we keep acquiring.
I'm curious how you guys are balancing sort of growing the businesses organically versus buying. I mean, how are you guys, thinking about that?
I think every business has a different, everything in the portfolio has sort of a different profile to it, if you will. And I think what we've discovered now that we've gotten further into it is that, one of those assets has like probably the most robust organic growth profile of any of them. And now the name of the game is, okay, how do we give that company more resources? And some of the other ones are maybe more steady Eddie or have some upside to it, but maybe they're better suited to like bolt some other companies onto them and kind of do some tuck-ins to them. So I don't think we're coming in and saying the stuff that we're buying just naturally because we're opportunistic and sort of looking at like C grade type companies that we can bring to kind of a B level operating level. I don't think we're looking at them and saying, yeah, these are going to all be 20% organic growers, and what do we need to do to get them to that level? I think we would be happy with slow, steady, controlled growth for most of these things, and then optimize for cash generation, with the exception of those ones that we just know are better growers. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think that's right. I think growing a business is expensive, and I think what we've found is that looking at deals, finding deals, acquiring businesses is really in our sweet spot. And Colin and I are probably better going to pull off another deal than we are saying we want to grow this business by 30 or 40%. So we have people on our team that are better growth people than we are, and we're very fortunate for that. But for us, when we look at, we have a business today that's 5 million. If we want to double that to 10 million, it's probably a lot cheaper and a lot easier for us to go find another $5 million revenue business to pull alongside versus, try to organically grow that business by 5 million.
Any businesses out of your portfolio that maybe are your favorites if you guys had to rank them, versus ones maybe that you wish you didn't acquire, or, you want to get rid of from your portfolio?
It's a dangerous game to play.
Okay, Colin, you go first.
I mean, this time of year, it's hard not to get excited about flannel. So the flannel business that we own, it's called Vermont Flannel. I mean, it was a mid-teens growing company before we bought it for probably the previous decade. Minimal ad spend that the company was utilizing at the time we came into the picture. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a pretty cool company. I don't know. I don't think I would call it sexy, but it's pretty cool to make and sell flannel. And we got brick and mortar stores that look amazing. We got a team that runs the retail business there, and then a growing e-com presence. And so I think that's a company we could do for years and just let it grow 10, 15, 20% a year. And I think that's pretty cool. So probably flannel.
Yeah, that's a great business. One of my favorites right now is called Profit Mastery. It's a financial training program for small business owners, and it's been around for more than 40 years. More than 1 million participants around the world
Wow.
have gone through it. And the number of times that you walk up to someone, you shake their hand and say, "Oh, profit mastery changed my life, right? For people who run a business but may not have had that financial education, they're passionate about their product, they're passionate about their service that they offer. But profit mastery was really the tool that allowed them to grow their business, allowed them to operate a business in the way that it's supposed to be, where it's fun. You work on challenges that are exciting versus those that are stressful. It's a really wonderful business. So I really like that business.
And those two are obviously very, very different businesses. Anything you guys are focused on in particular, sort of moving forward? Obviously, when you guys first started down this path of building your own holding company, it was kind of, or your initial deal is just cash flow. Have you guys sort of dialed in your thesis a little bit more? What does that look like now?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think the way that I look at it, we have a profit mastery business that Joe mentioned, and what I love about it is it's IP based. So it's very different economic model than like making and selling flannel, which horribly seasonal, all really kind of a bad economic model, honestly. Um, but it's got a nice growth engine to it. So if we can balance that out with one or more other assets, other businesses, I think that'd be amazing. So Profit Mastery is just a really unique business where like the brand cachet is incredible. And if we can bolt services onto that and sort of create like a negative customer acquisition cost, like, hey, we'll teach you how to read and use your financials. Oh, by the way, we can actually do this stuff as a service on the back end, then we could kind of create like a little powerhouse business there with much, much higher margins, much better profit model than flannel potentially. Not to the same revenue level, but you know what I mean. And then at the same time, that could ultimately become kind of a deal flow machine, right? So if we're helping these people and then we're helping them with their numbers, maybe that ultimately turns into first look at future deals, which would be pretty cool. And then really just we've kind of come across some opportunistic other things that are a little bit larger than what we've historically looked at. So it just feels like we're kind of up leveling this size and caliber of the companies that we're working with. I think that's where we're going to head next. Um, Aside from that, I still have kind of a penchant for the public markets. So I'd love to see us get involved with like kind of in an activist situation or partner with, smaller public companies that really are no different from us, right? And if there's similar revenue level, they may already have a CEO who's good at what they're doing. They just need some help, whether that's deals, growth, whatever. Like, I think that could be something we could put some money to work in and help partner with some smaller public companies to try and maximize returns there. So I don't know, a couple different things that I think about.
That's interesting. I'm curious, how have you guys been financing all of these transactions, and how's that changing moving forward?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Go ahead, Joe.
on our own generally, and we've done everything from cash purchases to SBA conventional. We've done a little bit of mezz debt, some seller financing, a little bit of anything. So it really is whatever it takes to get the deal done. We've probably done it, and we can speak to our experience in doing so. It's gotten us to where we're at today, but I think looking ahead to next year, as Colin mentioned, each of our businesses that we buy, we keep getting larger in scope, a little bit more established, a little bit higher revenue and earnings volume. We're really looking on, to take on some outside investment here in 2026. We have 3 deals scheduled to close in the first quarter. And we have a lot of people who have been really watching us a while now and have said, when you're ready, let us know. So I think we're gonna take some people up on that and pull together a small fund to allow us to continue doing what we're doing. We just think we've built something that's pretty special. We have a bit of a track record at this point, and we still have a lot more gas left in the tank. So we're gonna keep doing this for a while.
Yeah, I'd say I appreciate what the SBA offers in terms of like the ability to do a deal with pretty little cash injection. But I think I'm sort of over the whole like flying that close to the sun process, if you know what I mean. So now we've got a track record. We've done a number of acquisitions. We own businesses that are sizable and well run and put operators in, and so I think if we can parlay that into something that's a little less deal by deal, you're just kind of scrambling to figure it out. I think that would be ideal, right? So that's our hope. That's our hope.
And is your goal that you would still take on some leverage for these deals in the future, or they would just be all equity? How do you think about that?
No, I think we would just use a significantly more conservative leverage profile than we've done in the past, right? Something that's way more reasonable. I don't know that it would make sense to do something with 100% equity. I appreciate liquidity and having funds available to do stuff. So I do think that's important, whether you own one company or 10 companies. Um, but I don't think we would lever them up quite like what a 10 down, 90 borrowed SBA loan would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, now that you guys have made so many acquisitions, what your diligence process looks like?
Yeah, I think I lean more on this is gonna sound insane, but I feel like everyone out there is trying to solve for the 100-point checklist, get 95 of them done, boom, I'm good to go. And I really want like 60. Like if we can get 60 out of 100, I feel pretty good. Maybe even less than that to some extent. And then I think another big piece of that is really like intuition, instinct, gut feel about the seller. Two way, not just like how do I feel about them, but how do they feel about us? Do I trust that person? Is that person like legit? I think about when Buffett was doing some of his early deals, and like the guy would do these deals with like one-pager agreements with almost no diligence whatsoever on some of the companies he was buying because he placed so much trust in the people that were running the company or selling the company. And so I do think there is some aspect to that. So I think for us, it's what's the cash at the end of the day? Number one thing to solve for. Number two, who's going to run it? How are we going to run it? Number three, what levers aren't they pulling that we can pull, right? So like they have no technology whatsoever. Cool, we can turn that on. That might be a heavy lift, but whatever. Or they have no marketing. Cool, we can turn that on. So solving for that, and then the fourth is how do I feel about the seller? And do they feel good about me? Do I trust them? And some loose vetting down that path. Just Joe, what's on your list?
Well, I think you're right, but you make it sound a little bit easier than it is. I think Helen,
Always.
we actually go in, we rebuild the financials from the ground up for any business that we look at. We think that small business accounting is just pretty terrible most of the time. So, we'll take a look at the financials that are sent over, but generally we like to see raw numbers, and we go in and we try to rebuild the business, knowing that it's going to be different under our ownership anyway.
Oh yeah.
So we go through,
Well,
I would say,
that's a given, Joe. I mean, we could be related by blood, and I'm still gonna do my own math. I mean, yeah.
but maybe not all the listeners. From what you said, some of the listeners are like, "Oh, I just got to get 60% of the way there, and it's a nice guy that's selling me a business. Let's get this deal done."
That's great. I love that. And I'm curious, you guys spoke about some of these levers you find that, maybe the previous owner wasn't pulling that you can now pull. Can you guys talk about maybe some wins you guys have had organically with some of the businesses you have acquired?
This is, in my view, this is like the number one most unappreciated facet of buying a small company. Because if you think about a company that's been around for 30, 40, maybe 50 plus years, the owner of that business is totally complacent, right? Maybe their foot's off the gas, they're running it the way that it's always been run. And so there sometimes can be like crown jewels hidden within there. So set aside things like, oh, I've never spent money on marketing. That one's kind of obvious. Anyone could figure that out. Or oh, I don't have technology, I'm not automating anything. Most people can figure that out too. And we look for those things as well. But I'm talking about stuff like I have one segment within my business that is a crown jewel and everything else is not that great. Well, cool. If I walk away from everything else and just keep that one crown jewel, I may have a gem of a business on my hands. And in one instance, we bought a company that had a huge warehouse and they had a big showroom where like retail customers could walk in and shop at this, warehouse. It was a distributor warehouse showroom. And they carried a ton of inventory in this warehouse, and the revenue it was generating was like nothing. And so we looked at it and said, well, there's this other channel of sales that was really almost looked and felt more like dropship, wholesale dropship. And so we just said, hey, well, this is the jewel. Like, let's just stop doing this, pull out all the inventory associated with it, and let's just go focus on this one channel. And the economics are way better. And so we literally I'm like, we literally closed that down, retained none of it, walked away from all of the revenue tied to that warehouse showroom channel, and just kept the other part of the business. So things like that that are a little bit of a leap of faith, can really add a ton of value, a ton of value, both to the numbers and to like the ops, like how hard is it to run that company?
Any wins, Joe, on your end? Your maybe favorite wins?
Yeah, I think as Colin referenced, some of the things we do where they're not rocket science. So a lot of the businesses we look at, we love it when it looks like the website's from 1995 because we're like, oh great, like we can put an optimized website in here. That means they haven't really spent money on marketing. One of the businesses we're in the process of acquiring, they're just very clear that like we have not been to a single trade show for more than 5 years. And by the way, you should probably go to two a year. And here they are. And those types of things are just pretty low hanging fruit for us. So as Colin mentioned earlier, some of these businesses we're buying, they may be operating at a C level today. They're profitable the way that they are. And we don't have to be an industry expert to pull a couple of these levers to say, oh, you have 20,000 customers and you've never sent an email before. Like there's probably some value there that we could come and like start providing some regular email support or, those types of things. So we don't have to be able to be an A plus industry operator. If we get it to a simple B, then we've already added a decent amount of value, and by that point we can bring in someone who is a GM or manager who may be more specific to that industry and can build in that area a little bit more.
Or even geography, Joe, right? I mean, we've moved a whole bunch of warehouses and said, hey, here's a business operating in a high cost jurisdiction. Well, what if we move it to, 3PL model? Or what if we relocate it and consolidate it or bring it closer to us? I mean, literally picked up and moved a handful of businesses in the past. And
We've done
I don't know,
four,
I
right?
think that,
Four
Wow.
moves, and every time we do it, we say we're never going to do this
I've
again.
moved 3PLs and warehouses a couple times. It's no small feat.
no,
It,
no, it's
it,
it's
it's
it's definitely not. We did one where the day before we showed up, the seller of the business like sold all of their pallets, like every pallet. So the whole warehouse was just floor loaded with boxes of product. It's like, oh gosh. So we have to move all this onto like five semis with no pallets. Oh, jeez.
That's funny. Not great for you, but that's crazy.
I
I'm
lost
curious.
like 8 pounds that day, Helen. It was great.
I love that. I'm curious, now that you guys have this portfolio, is the goal sort of a long-term hold, or would you guys sort of opportunistically sell? Is the goal just, keep cash flowing? How are you guys thinking about this, especially as maybe for the first time you guys are looking to bring on investors as well?
Yeah, so I think generally we look at a business and we say we want to buy a business that we're willing to hold on to for 20 years or more. So I think that's going into it. We always feel that way. Um, Generally, we're not looking to sell, but I think we would be opportunistic to sell in some ways. And then, as Colin alluded to, our businesses, we've owned some of them for 5 or more years now. And we're at that point that some of them are strong growers, some are cash flow, some are just small and plateaued. So I think we're at a point that we will start to reshuffle our portfolio some because a smaller business just may not be worth our time or energy that it was, and we've already extracted some value out of it. So I think we recognize that we're not the perfect owner for every business at every stage, and it's not necessarily healthy for us to own a business that we don't feel like we can add value in. We can't do a whole lot for it. It's better off to sell that business off to someone who really has the aptitude to grow a business like that. So I think generally we're opportunistic about buying. I think we'll be more opportunistic about selling, and then I think we'll sit down on an annual basis and say which businesses really fit. Are there some in our portfolio that just don't fit any longer, and we should look at selling more proactively.
That's interesting. And like, I guess, obviously hindsight's 2020, but anything you would have done sort of differently on your journey looking back, having done now 15 deals, um, obviously gone a bunch of different directions and, different size deals. But, for someone maybe listening to this who's just going out and buying their first or maybe second business, any sort of particular words of wisdom for them?
A few things from my end. One, I would have shuffled my personal assets in a little bit of a different way. Colin and I didn't necessarily know that we were going to be going down this path with business after business, but after you get your first personal guarantee on your real estate and things, it's really hard to change that. So, we moved in the past several years, and it made it challenging to sell a home and buy a new home and remodel a home and those types of things. So I probably would have structured some things a little bit differently just to make, I guess, allow a little bit more flexibility in that from a personal level. I'd say from a business perspective, I would have probably bought a little bit bigger. We bought businesses that were small businesses and well within our means, which I think was a great way for us to get some reps in and to learn. But I think at the end of the day, there is something to that scale, and buying a little bit bigger wouldn't have hurt us. I think we started on the very small end, and we had a lot of room to grow before we started running up against private equity and other more competitive buyers. So I think I would have gone a little bit bigger than where we started if I could do it over again.
Anything on your end, Colin?
Yeah, I do think the bigger makes sense. I think there's a sweet spot, maybe not so big that the search fund crowd's looking for, but not so small that you've got, nothing to play with. So I think the size thing is important. Personally, I probably would have wanted to round up more equity in the early days. Like maybe this is just because I've been doing it for almost a decade now and I've seen a lot of stuff. But there were moments where like you can't call yourself an entrepreneur if you don't have at least one sleepless night along the way, right? Like something's not working if you don't have that happen to you. And so I think there were some points in time where we were flying a little too close to the sun and combination of luck and determination got us through that. But I think just having a little bit more equity and a little less emphasis on the 10 down, 90 borrowed in the early days for the people who are like thinking the SBA path is the way they want to go, find that extra capital. It's worth its weight in gold. And the working capital stuff, I mean, I was an accountant and knew that pretty well, but I still underappreciated the importance of working capital. Like, have more than you need. Like, have more resources available than you think you need, because there's a 100% chance you're going to underestimate how much you actually need. And maybe I say that because flannel is insanely seasonal, like hyper seasonal, horribly seasonal. Um, but that working capital is so important. It's so important. And the SBA, they don't really do enough to help you think about that when you're going to get your first SBA loan. You're like, oh crap, like I got to make it through the full year to get the full year's results, right? Like still got to get through it. So anyway, more equity.
No, 100%. I mean, that's like the number one thing I see. The biggest mistake I see people make is on, not having enough working capital. So I totally agree there. And I feel like people can't hear that enough. So
Yeah.
I'm also curious, final question for me. I want to be sensitive of your guys' time, but you guys got into this, almost a decade ago now. How has the business buying environment changed from your perspective? Obviously a lot more, maybe a lot more that you hear, but how does it actually feel on the ground?
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I see more people interested in it. So I think the pool of buyers is definitely increasing. Um, I don't know how prepared all those people are to actually do it. Like, I think there's a lot of aspects of my day or week, and same for Joe, that are just totally different than what you might have vision in your head of what it's going to be. Seller expectations seem way higher, seem way higher than what they were 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And I think that probably is a function of just the increased interest and attention on the industry. I don't know. I don't know that the number of deals out there has increased, like the whole silver tsunami thing. I haven't looked at data extensively on it, but like I don't know if it's there yet, if that has materialized, that thesis. So you have more demand and you have maybe the same level of sellers. So you've got to be a little bit more creative in how you are finding things and what you're looking for. Um, it is way easier to find a deal when you're already in an industry. So for us, now that we have sort of each of these platforms, we actually have sourced most of our acquisitions internally just through knowing other players in each industry that we're in for probably what, the last 6 transactions we've done, Joe, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think when you're already in it and you got a toehold, it does become a little bit easier to find other things to bolt onto it, if you know what I mean.
Tell us how you're approaching. If someone's listening right now and they're already in an industry and they want to maybe, find a bolt on, what do you guys do there? Do you just reach out? Like how do you guys approach another owner?
Joe is a master at playing this game. You tell him, Joe.
Well, I think it's just really knowing the industry and talking to the other players. So when we're in industry, we talk to our suppliers, we talk to our vendors, we talk to our service providers, we talk to competitors. So I think what we've found is in the small business world, business to business, people are not like terribly cutthroat most of the time. They might be if you're completely 100% competitor in the same geo or something like that. But we have a number of competitors that I just picked up the phone and called and said, hey, we're going through this. Are you struggling with this too? And they say, yeah, actually we are. And really developing that relationship. And I think part of it comes back to we're buying businesses in industries that are not really sexy businesses. A lot of the other owners in the space have been doing it for 20 or 30 years. And they're just curious. Why did a young guy, decide to put his net worth in this and buy something? I think it's just something that's new, and they're curious, and they're like, what am I missing that you're seeing here? And I think a lot of people, again, it's been really good for us just to be able to say we want to preserve that legacy, right? We're buying a business because someone did something really good, and you want to come along for that ride too. That's pretty interesting. When you're ready, give me a call and we'll talk about it. So I think it's just been relationship building, and no
Yeah.
different than you would for something that's sales level. But I just try to be genuine and curious and talk to other people quite a bit.
Yeah, you are very genuine about it, and it's usually with the guys of, "Hey, I'm dealing with this thing, or I see this thing. What do you think?" And Joe is underplaying. He's like a Malcolm Gladwell super connector from Tipping Point. Like his one of his superpowers is really just connecting with other people and connecting dots, but no ulterior motive. Starting with those conversations, and then you never know when something's going to come back and say, "Hey, have had really good conversations with you, and now I'm looking to exit. Are you interested in buying? I know you bought that company over there. How you want to take a look at mine?" I mean, that's happened to us two, three, 4 times now, maybe more than that.
No, that's it's very impressive, and um I want to be sensitive of time once again, but any final words of wisdom, especially maybe for the first time buyers out there.
What I always tell them is don't do it, right? No, it's been a lot of fun. It's a really great lifestyle. It's something that Colin and I really enjoy doing. But for those people that sit back and look at some of the the Facebook videos and things about how it's going to be passive income and it's a great way to grow your wealth and things like there's some value in that. But for most people, if you're buying a small business, it's a really different environment. It's a really different set of expectations, and I don't think most people appreciate that. So I think if you're serious about buying a small business and you haven't worked in a small business, try that first, right? I mean, go say I'm done with corporate world and I'm going to go work in a small manufacturing business for 12 months and see what that's like. We had a business that was it was right next to some train tracks, right? And that the trains would go by like 5 or 6 times a day. And when the trains go by, you can't do anything. It's just like, it feels like it's going down like your dining room table, right? Like right through your house. And it's like, I don't know if I could work in that business on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think that's what you see with a lot of these small manufacturing businesses and things. Like you're talking about working with likely a different demographic of people in a very different type of work environment. There are a lot of things that are not comfortable about it. I mean, I look at some of the things, it's like, oh yeah, for a little while, my office was in the basement of a retail store in a corner somewhere that barely like had Wi-Fi and all these types of things. Or my office was working out of the truck. I mean, I think so many people that are looking at buying a business don't understand that reality, and it's really easy to sit behind a computer and crunch some numbers and say this makes a lot of sense. But if you actually want to buy a small business, then go work in a small business, see what it's like in that type of environment before you decide to pull the trigger.
It's good advice. I mean, you will wind up working more and making less money for some period of time. I mean, it's a game of patience, so there's definitely no overnight success to it, unless you're super insanely lucky. So it's taken a lot of time to get to where we're at. I think one step short of what you're talking about, Joe, is just go shadow with someone. You know, go find an owner and say, "Hey, I'm willing to help out on a project, or let me come out and help out with some stuff, and you don't have to manage me too much, right?" Like, I think just getting some exposure to an owner or the ops of a company without having to like plunge in would be a really good way to toe dip into it. The other piece of advice that I would give to people, stereotypical accountant of me, would be to know your numbers. So a lot of people who get into this may not be the accounting types, and so I have not met a single successful business owner that does not know their numbers cold, right? So have to know your numbers, have to know what they mean, have to know what feeds into them. It's not a game of like penciling in increased margins and saying, "Yeah, cool, I did it." Like, you got to figure out what actually makes that happen on at a tactical level, and that's not easy. So knowing the numbers is an absolute 100% requirement. Have to have it.
100%. Well, Joe and Colin, if people want to reach out after listening to this, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, our website is circlecitycapitalgroup.com, and both Colin and I are active on LinkedIn, so you can find us there pretty easily.
Amazing. Well, Joe and Colin, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Loved hearing your story and getting to know you guys better. Super excited for this next phase, and
Thank you.
I'll definitely be following along. So hopefully we'll bring you back on.
Love it.
All right. Thank you, Helen. Appreciate your time today.